Hey guys, Lou with LG Speed and Custom here. In this video, we're going to narrow this Ford 9-inch rear end and stuff it under the back of Felipe's 46 Ford Coupe with a 4-link and coilovers. So this is video 3 on Felipe's 46 Ford Coupe. Video 1, we did a teardown on the front end. We pulled the front clip off, we pulled the flathead V8 out, and we pulled the original front suspension out. Video 2, we installed this IFS front suspension with disc brakes and rack and pinion steering. Now we're on video 3, which is going to be the rear suspension. So this car currently has the stock banjo rear end with the torque tube, transverse spring, and wishbones. We're going to be pulling that out and putting a 8-inch rear end in with this 4-link and coilover kit. So Felipe supplied this kit when he brought the car over. I believe it's made by Johnny Law's Motors, which I've never installed one of their kits before. I usually build my own 4-link systems from scratch, but this is what he brought. It comes with absolutely no instructions, which, whatever, I'm sure we can figure it out. There is like a little QR code on the box that says, scan me for instructions, and it takes you to a website that's not related to their website at all. Asks for an email address, and then they'll send you the instructions. It looks, I don't know, it's a little too sketchy for me. Not that I'm like a, internet is scary kind of person, but I'm a millennial. I grew up with the internet, and I can tell when stuff doesn't quite look right. And that website link doesn't quite look right, so not clicking on that. But I'm sure we can figure this 4-link kit out. For the beginning of this video, we're gonna just pull this rear suspension out. It is still hooked to the stock transmission up here, so we'll probably take the transmission out as well. It should be pretty straightforward. Whoa! We'll undo the torque tube, undo the transverse spring mount. It's just a couple U-bolts up top. It's been upgraded to tube shocks at some point, so they'll just come apart like normal shocks. Undo the brake hose, and the whole assembly should come out in one shot. One thing I would like to do while we have this apart is, before I put the rear suspension in, I want to move the axle back a bit. Right now it's at stock ride height, and it's, it looks okay. But these cars, the wheel isn't centered in the fender, and when you lower it, especially like with the wishbone and torque tube suspension, as you lower it, it kind of comes a little further forward. I don't know if it actually does come forward, or if it's just as the wheel gets higher in there, you can really see how far forward it sits. My old 47 Ford that I had, it was lowered with the original suspension and just put longer shackles in. And it was really noticeable with a 3-inch drop how far forward that wheel sat. So since we're building, a whole new suspension for the back, essentially, we'll just slide everything back a little bit and center that wheel in the fender. I'm gonna start with popping this hubcap off. Then I got a square here. It's the bottom of the grounding frame. There we go, now you can see. Let's put a mark on the floor here where our axle center line is. And now I got a plumb bob here. We can stop spinning there. All right. Put a mark up here. I just put a mark right here. This is where our axle center line is, using the plumb bob based on this mark we made on the floor here. So that's just like a reference point so that we know where to, I don't know, I'm thinking we should move it back at least an inch, maybe 2 inches. But what we'll do is, once we get the rear end, the new rear end sitting in there, we'll put a wheel on it and put it on the floor jack, and just we'll jack it up in there and just move it back until it looks right to the eyeball. And then from there we can, see how far back we came. Got the other side marked here, so now I'm just gonna go ahead and blast the wheels off. Getting my lug nut stuck. There we go. With the wheels off, we can start taking stuff apart under here. We've got our tube shocks that come off up here. We've got a panhard bar bracket that's right here. We can just undo that there. 4 nuts right here to take these U-bolts off that will release the spring pack from the cross member. Then further up here at the front cross member, we've got our brake hose right here. Emergency brake, we'll undo that and just put it to the side for now. Further up here, we've got at the front of the torque tube, we've got our speedometer cable right here to come off, and this little coupler right here attaches the torque tube to the stock transmission, which we might as well take out now. Maybe we'll do that first because it's just kind of hanging there right now, and the torque tube's the only thing holding it in, and these 2 bolts. So we'll take it out and get it out of the way first, and then we'll start pulling the rear end out. There we have it. The original rear end and rear suspension is out of the car now. So we'll wheel this over to the hot rod building pile and continue on putting the 8-inch in that. So that rear end outside, the engine and transmission that came out of this car. I've got this Model A chassis sitting up here. I got this from my friend Ross a zillion years ago, and it is totally set up for a flathead and early Ford 3-speed. All that stuff would drop right in here. Doesn't that sound like a great idea? That'd be a good project next. Take all the guts out of this 46 Ford and build a Model A chassis, an AV8 chassis. Well, it's a few days later, and Felipe has dropped off his 8-inch rear end, which turns out to be, this is a 9-inch rear end, not an 8-inch. And I believe it's out of like a F100, just because the spring perches that have been cut off here were on top of the axle rather than underneath it. So it came out of a pickup truck. And what that means is it is going to be really wide for what we need. I did a brief measurement with the wheels. By the way, he's brought more parts as well. We've got front and rear wheels and tires. These are 17 by 7s on the front, and back there we got some 17/8s for the back. He also found, for those that watched the video putting the IFS front end in, we're missing coils, we're missing calipers and caliper brackets. Like I suggested or thought might have happened in that video, he just forgot to bring a box. So that's all done. The front end's done. We got our wheels and tires and the rear end. So yes, we got to narrow this rear end. How much are we going to narrow it? I don't know. I got a plan. So I just picked up the tires from the tire shop and got them mounted. We've got a 245 by 45 ZR17. I think what I'm going to do is jack the wheels up in the fenders where they sit nice, where they look proper, and we got good clearance in here. And then we will measure from rim to rim and get our wheel surface mounting width. The wheel surface mounting width means like the surface that your wheel mounts to. I just went and dug out these wheel cribs and then mocked the tire up on here where I think it looks good. Remember I said we were going to move it further back so that it's centered in the fender? That looks pretty centered in the fender to my eye. We've got good clearance this way and good clearance on the back side. So we should have plenty of room for this wheel to like go up and down in the fender. I've measured from the frame rail to the rim, and we're, ballparkish. It's not dead centered side to side, but it's in the ballparkish. I think it's close enough for what we need to do. I'm going to measure from like the mounting surface to mounting surface here. If I can get my tape measure to cooperate. There we go. So from that set of bolt holes to this set of bolt holes, we are 60 and a quarter. Let's just make it 60, which is 5 feet. We'll make it 60 inches just for like a nice even number. We got room to, we can go 1/8 of an inch side to side if we have to. And I'd rather have it a little bit narrower. When I first mocked these up, I brought them right out to the outside edge of the wheel, or the wheel outside of the wheel to the fender to like really make the fender look full and kind of flush to the outside. And what I determined was from our inside frame rail to our fender on that side was like an inch difference than this side, meaning that the fenders aren't exactly the same side for side, which is pretty common on a car like this. So we'll just kind of like, we'll bring them in a little bit is what I did where I've got them sitting now. And that way the tire is far enough away from the fender that you can't tell the gaps are different on both sides. And we've got the same measurement from here to here. So anyways, 60 inches, that's what we want. We want our the brake drum outside edges to be 60 inches on the new rear end. We want 60 inches, and this rear end is currently 65 3/4. So we got to narrow this rear end. Where's my pen? 5 3/4. I'm gonna write that down. 5.75 divided by 2. I need a calculator. 2 7/8. 2 7/8 and 2 7/8. So if we narrow this 2 7/8 off each side, will give us our 5 3/4 inch narrowing, which will give us our 60 inches wheel mounting surface, which means the wheels should sit about where they're mocked up right now. Before Felipe brought me this 9-inch rear end, he had it fully rebuilt, which is awesome because it's, essentially ready to go. But the downside is we've got to narrow like 3 inches off each side now, or 2 7/8, and it's got brand new Yukon axles in it now, which were probably pretty expensive. So aftermarket axles, usually when you narrow a rear end, you just buy aftermarket axles to fit your new measurement. It's more cost effective than getting a machine shop to cut your axles down. Aftermarket axles usually have a pretty long splined section on them so that you can like fine tune them to fit exactly like your width. So hopefully there's enough splined surface on these axles that we can cut 2 7/8 off the end of them so they fit back in. How do we know if they do or not? I don't know. We're gonna have to pull it apart. We got to pull it apart anyways to narrow it. So that's our next step. We're gonna pull the brakes off, pull the axles out, and then pull the center section out. Because when we cut the tubes down, I got a jig that goes in there that I have a center section that's modified for my jig to go in to keep the axle ends true when we weld them back on. So I think I'm gonna just switch this to time lapse, and you guys can watch me really quickly blow this rear end apart. If you've never taken a rear end apart before, these 9 inches are pretty simple. This hole right here, that is there so that you can get access. Oh, that doesn't want to turn very good. There we go. There is 4 nuts and bolts that hold this backing plate and the axle in together. you access them through, let's just do one real quick right now. Just like that. You take all 4 nuts off, and then, your axle slides out, pull it all the way out, then your backing plate comes off. Do that on both sides, and then take all these nuts off here, and then your center section comes out, and you've got yourself a bare rear end housing. Good news, there's no oil in there, so we didn't have to deal with that. Look at that, looks great. Bad news, definitely not an extra 3 inches of splines on these axles, which means we cannot reuse these. We got to buy new axles. I'm just calling around to my suppliers to see if I can get an axle for this. So here's some stuff that you need to know when you are ordering axles. One of the first things is the splines. How many splines does this have? To count it, I make a mark right there. You see there's that white paint pen mark. That way I know which one I started on, and I just count all the way around. This is a 31 spline axle. Most 9 inches are either a 28 spline or a 31 spline. 31 spline is obviously the stronger one. Aside from the splines, you need to know the length. So you measure from the edge of the axle flange to the edge there, and we've got 32 inches. Now we need to subtract 2 7/8 off of this, which is going to put us at 29 1/8 for our axle measurement. And then the last thing we need to know, the 2 other things, you need your bolt pattern. This one is 5 on 5.5. And then we need our bearing measurement where our bearing goes on. And this one is 1.575 inches. So with all those 31 spline axle, 5 on 5.5 bolt pattern, 29 1/8 total length, and a 1.575 inch bearing, you give those to the people at the axle store, and they will tell you yes or no. I quickly checked Summit Racing, and they do have a listing for one, 31 spline, 29.2 inches, and we need 29.125. That's close enough, it can work. We can always shave 1/8 of an inch off the end. The only downside is not in stock, and expected ship date is December the 1st, which at the time of filming this video is over a month away. I don't want to wait a month for axles, so we'll see what some of the other suppliers come up with and see if maybe narrowing this rear end is even like a good idea or not. Maybe it might just be easier to get a different rear end. Out here on my rear end rack, I've got a Ford 8-inch right here, which is 57 inches wide, so a little bit narrower, and it's not the right bolt pattern. But if we put spacers on here that go from this bolt pattern to the 5 on 5.5 bolt pattern, that will, they're I think 1.25 inches thick, so that will, get us pretty much at our 60 inch that we need, close enough at least. So that's always an option too. Felipe, I wish you would have called me first before you got that rear end rebuilt, but nothing we can do about it now. We'll just, I don't know, we'll figure it out. We'll make it work. It'll be fine. All right, it's the next day. So I've heard back from all the local axle suppliers, and nobody's got anything. So I resorted to plan B. I took the axles over to my friend Ken, who's a very skilled machinist, and he's just gonna shorten them. I had to like convince him to do it. He didn't want to do it. I don't think it's a particularly fun job, but he's gonna do it. So thank you, Ken. You are my hero. I started out this morning by cleaning these axle ends up. I just took a grinder with a grinding stone, knocked the big stuff off, then hit it with a flap disc, and then finish it off with a DA sander. From here, we can start the narrowing process. So let me show you the jig here. The jig is pretty simple. We've got this big solid bar, and then we've got these four pieces here. These two are the same, and these two are the same. These guys here, they go in this rear end center section that's been gutted. Then you take that and bolt it back in. These two end pieces here, they got different sizes for different style rear ends, but they fit nice and snug in that hole. So what you do is you bolt this center section in with these guys in there, slide this big long bar through, and it goes all the way through, pokes out on each end. And then these guys, you just slide them on the end like that. And then they sit in there. And what it does is hold these axle ends in a direct straight line all the way through the center section and to the other side. And that way you can go ahead and weld it up. As far as like keeping this part square, I mean, obviously you want to keep it as square as you can, but the only part that truly matters is that these axle ends are square with the center section. The axle itself is only attached here and the bearing out here. So that's why those are the only parts that really matter. This, I mean, in theory, you could have it come up, come down, come up, come down. Doesn't matter as long as that end and this end are perfectly straight. So to cut this down, I got that stuck in there now. Oh God, this is embarrassing. I'm gonna go to the other side. To cut this down, what I usually like to do is just cut this axle end off, remove it, cut the tube down, slide the end back in, and weld it back up. However, as you can see, this tapers, and we need to come in like almost 3 inches. So we're gonna be in this part here. This axle end's not gonna fit super awesome in there. It's gonna be all loose and floppy. So what I was thinking of instead, I had two thoughts. One, I thought, oh, we'll just cut it in the middle, which would probably be easy enough to do. But then I thought, why don't we split this weld right here on both sides, separate the tube, cut our end off, and then slide the tube back in. As you can see, they poke through quite a ways in there. If I was to guess, I would say it's at least this far in. And that'll just kind of, in my opinion, I think that will be just a stronger way to go. And less grinding as well. Well, yes and no. I mean, we got to grind this weld out to separate them, which is probably the same amount of work as, you know, if we welded it there and ground it together. So I don't know. In the end, it probably doesn't make that big of a difference, but what the heck, let's try it anyways. All right, one of the first things we're gonna do, you see this big weld right here? That goes all the way through. I'm gonna take this piece of square tubing, lay it on that weld, kind of like that, and then take this Sharpie and draw a big line. I'm gonna do that on both sides actually, although I think this side might be out of frame, so just bear with me for a second, but I'm just doing the same thing. Why did we draw this line? So that when we cut this off and they're separated, when we go to put it back on, we can line this line back up with this big weld seam here, and then we know that our axle ends with our brakes are clocked properly. Now they don't have to be like machinist absolutely dead set the same within like, you know, 0.00001 degrees. Just the Sharpie line lined up with that will be close enough, because if they are like 0.00012 degrees off, all that means is your backing plate is going to be just turned a little bit, which it'll still totally function fine. So it's not, you don't have to get deadly accurate with it. All right, next. Now this edge Is this still in frame? Can you guys see what I'm doing right here? Yes. So this edge right here is not cut out super awesome. So what I'm gonna do is, again, use this weld as my guide point. And I'm gonna take a Sharpie, and on here, I'm just gonna put a line and a line and mark X, meaning that's where the tape measure sat. And we're gonna keep it parallel with our weld. To the other end here, we are 26 and an eighth. And we want to take 2 7/8 off, which will put us at 23 and a quarter. So from there to, same thing, I'm going to put a Sharpie mark here where we measured. We want our new measurement to be 23 and a quarter. I'm going to write that down. Also, what side is this? This is the driver's side axle. Drivers, and on the side over here, I'm going to put P and P for passenger. Let's measure this side. Same thing, I'm going to put a mark where my tape measures from, getting measured from. What's this side say? This side is a little bit different. Oh yeah, I guess because the center tube doesn't sit totally center, which is normal. So this is 24 inches. Well, 24 and 32nd. Oh man, we'll just call it 24. 24 minus 2 and 7/8 would be 20. 24 minus 2 is 22. Minus 7/8 would be 21 and an eighth. 21 and an eighth. I'm going to double check that. 21 and an eighth. 21 and an eighth is correct. So from there to here, when we put this back together, and this line is lined up with this weld, we want this flange here to be 21 and an eighth on this side, and 23 and a quarter on that side. So this center section, whoa, my bar just fell down. This center section, as you can see, is offset, which is totally normal, totally fine. There's no, some people like want to shorten one end to get this rear end totally centered, but it doesn't matter. It's fine the way it is. So now that we've got our measurements, I'm going to take just a grinder with a stone like this and probably come in straight on like this. And I just want to take the weld itself off, just this part right here. I don't want to dig into the axle, but if I do dig into the axle tube itself, it'll be fine because that's going to get slid in here anyway, so it'll be fine. This is why I did not take my measurement from here. Like, it would make sense, like, oh, we want to measure from there to there, but this weld, because it's going to get cut out of here, we're going to lose that point, which is why I decided to measure from this point here instead. Here you can really see what I mean by this isn't cut out like super awesome, but it's fine. That's why we marked it. Well, I've ground that down, and then I even took the zip disc and cut even deeper right into it. I cut out a 3/8 circle that I put in the end here, and then I've got a long bar coming through to this side to hit with a hammer. And I have hit this thing and hit it hard, and it's not budging. So I don't know if this idea is going to work. I don't know if I don't think it's like spot welded in here anywhere. When I look inside with a light, like I can't see any weld heat transfer marks on the tube that goes inside. Maybe this is heat up and it's slid in and it's pressed in. I don't know. Either way, I don't think I'm going to continue with this route because I'm scared I'm going to break something. So let's just go to the other thing we were talking about, and we'll just cut it right here. And it'll be fine. And it'll probably be a lot easier, actually. When we slide it back together and weld this up and the jig is in there, I'll just go ahead and re-weld this back up again, and it'll be okay. Okay, this is all set up in the chop saw. My new-to-me chop saw. Shout out to Jacob Burns, who gave me this a couple weeks ago. He bought a brand new one, so he gave me his old one, which is awesome, because my old one, I don't know if anyone ever noticed, the handle was actually like broken off and just dangled there. It's like that for I think it broke 2012 is when it broke. So yeah, it still worked fine. I used it for years. I've dropped the blade down and made a mark on the masking tape where the outside of the blade is. Now we're gonna measure from there 2 7/8 in and make a new mark on our tape, and then we know exactly where to cut, because this blade is, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or so thick. So that way, like, that takes into consideration the thickness of the blade. There's our first mark. 2 7/8 over is our second mark. So after we cut this off, and it's gonna cut on this side of the line, then we'll just slide this down in the saw until this line lines up with this side of the blade. And then we'll do our second cut. That's a thick axle tube. All right, both ends are cut off. Man, that chop saw cut really nice. Happy with that. I just quickly cleaned these edges up with a file. Got it set back up on the old table saw workbench here. So now I think our next step is to drop this center section in. I've already put the little bushings inside and tighten them down. By the way, when I put this in and suck them down with the impact gun, I did have the bar going through it. So just to make sure that these stay like parallel with each other. Where's the top? You guys got the top side. Come on. There we go. These things never slide on nice. Have you noticed that? I think I might need a mallet. I don't want to suck it down with the nuts because, you know. There we go. Just a little tappa. Oh yeah, that one. When I took it apart, that stud came out. Cool. All right, let's slide the big bar through next. Just gonna put a little grease on this, just for fun. Okay, we got enough room here. Oh yeah. Okay, there we're through the first one, through the second one, and out the other side. Those are the pieces we cut out. These are the new pieces. P and P, so that's gonna go there. And cool. Come on, get in there. This is the tight one. That's good though. Boom. All right.
Well, wait a minute. There we go. I had this one on the wrong side. I was like, why is this one not lining up very good? Cool. Now we'll tack this, and then I think we'll probably V them out. It is a little bit offset. I wonder if I can take some angle iron and clamp it. See if we got a little piece here. This piece is pretty, yeah, that's too big. All right, we've got our jig all the way through. I put some clamps on here just to hold these axle ends nice and tight to this, I don't even know what you'd call that piece, the bushing, I guess. And then I took a piece of C-channel and clamped it to the axle tube just to line these guys up real nice. We've got our Sharpie indexing mark is lined up nice, so I think I'll put, I don't know, 2 or 3 good tacks on there, and then I'll take this off and move it to the other side and get that piece tacked in place. I'm just going to do just a straight fusion weld at this point, or tack, no filler rod. And that is because you remember how thick those axle tubes were, right? Well, once we get this tacked in place, I want to open this up and like V it out so that we can get in there nice and deep and get some good penetration when we weld this. All right. Loosen our clamps off. And do the same on the other side. All right, both sides are tacked. All right, that is tacked on both sides. Fits really nice. Gonna go ahead and take this guy now, this big grinding stone, and open this up so that we can fill her with Miller. All right, I've got it all V'd out, gouged out, opened up so that I can get way down deep inside there. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna crank the welder up as high as it'll go, and I'm gonna get down in there and I'm gonna do a real deep, hot, super penetrative root weld. I'm gonna do there, this one that we gotta re-weld back together, and then this one over here. Then I'm gonna go back and use a good filler rod, and we'll do a second pass, and what that's going to do is fill this back up again, still getting good penetration because we're going to go into the sides as well as into our root weld, and then back into the other side again, and then just like fill it all up, and then we can grind it smooth and no one will ever know that there was a splice there.
She had to make it last. She got time at the come back again. Well, the year went by fast, it was written hard.
All right, we're all welded up. That went really well. For you subscribers that pay a little bit extra to get smell-o-vision, you're really getting your money's worth today. It smells fantastic in here. Nothing like really hot, like gear oil infused metal getting welded together to like really like heighten those senses. We're gonna let this cool down because it is 18,000 degrees right now. And then once it cools down, we can, you know, take it apart, I guess, and the narrowing of the housing per se is done. Then we just gotta wait for Ken with the axles. He figured he'd be like the end of next week, so might be a little bit before we finish this rear end narrowing up. It's the next morning. I've let this sit overnight and it's nice and cooled down now. I'm just gonna quickly hit it with a flapper disc and smooth these welds out, and then we can take it apart. All right. Well, that turned out pretty good, I think. Our weld is, I think, right here. So this is old stuff from, I think there was another set of spring perches that were put on this axle at one time because there's like old grinder marks in here from previous stuff that's been done. But the important part is where we did our work, it looks fantastic. So from here, we can take our jig back out. Just a little tappa, 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 tappa. There's one side. The other side. And we can put our center section and backing plates and stuff back on, and then when Ken's done with the axles, we can just pop them back in. With the center section back out, I can actually measure these now. Any of you guys notice that once the center section went in, I couldn't measure off here anymore? So keep that in mind when you guys do this at home, or I'll keep that in mind the next time I do one of these. This side is 23 1/4, which is what we needed. And this side is 21 1/8. Perfect. That worked out amazing. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit of gasket stuff on here, drop the original pumpkin back in, and center section's in, backing plates are back on. Next step, axles. All right, it's a week later. Got our axles back. Just gonna put a little bit of grease on here. And we'll slide the axle in. Once we get both axles in, we can roll the rear end underneath the car, set it in place, put our wheels on, and see how it fits. If I can get my axle to get started. Come on. There we go. Get a mallet and give it a tappa, tappa, tappa. There we go. And then our nuts just go back in through this hole, like when we took it apart. line is turning, or yoke. That's a good thing. Our axles are engaged. Feels really good. All right. Do the next side and put our brake drums on. All right, done. 10 out of 10. Feels really nice. Everything's turning. Sounds good. Looks good. Feels good. Must be good. Drums on. Perfect. Here's our moment of truth. I got some flat bar on the ends to represent where the wheels are going to bolt up. 60 inches on the dot. Boom. Nailed it.
All right, let's take these wheels off the cribs. We'll get them out of there. Roll the floor jack underneath and jack this up into place. I've jacked it up until we bottomed out on the bump stop there. And then from the backing plate to the center of this rivet, I've got 4 5/8 on
into
each
place
side.
and see how it fits.
And it looks pretty killer. With the axle centered on the bump stop, the wheel's actually like sitting centered in the fender, which is cool. So maybe the original axle doesn't line up with the bump stop. We've got good clearance all the way through here. It's a little tighter from here to here on this side than it is on the other side. So I went ahead and measured from the frame rail to the outside of the fender, and this fender sticks out like considerably more, like almost an inch more than the other side. So that's not anything to do with the chassis work. That's just the fenders are different shapes on each side, which is pretty normal on an old car like this. Who knows what kind of history these fenders have had. Maybe they were like that from the factory. Maybe this side got pushed in. Maybe the other side got pulled out. Who knows? But I think it'll be fine. It's not like
Inside
a big
the
enough
wheel well here, we've got good
difference that
clearance.
you'll like
I don't
notice
know,
it, and you like my
2
dad always
inches
said,
or
you
so
can't see
on
both
that
sides at the
side,
same
and
time. The important part
probably
is
an
the
inch and a
rear
half
end is
on this
centered
side.
from frame. So I'm happy with that. This tire is a 245 45 17, which I think is about 10 inches wide.
Now that we've got the rear end sitting in place where we want it, our next step is to mount it in there. And to do that, we're going to be using this 4-link with coilovers. However, we're going to do that in the next video. So make sure if you're not already subscribed, you do that right now and hit notifications. So when that video comes out, you know all about it.
Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about narrowing a rear end to fit in a 46 Ford Coupe. This same process pretty much works for all rear ends, basically. I've done Ford 8 inches, Chrysler 8 3/4. I've never done an 8.8, but I don't see why it would be any different. It's basically the same theory for every rear end, and that jig that I have so far has worked for every rear end I've done. I've never had one where I had to modify anything on it. So anyways, make sure to check out the website, lgspeedcustom.com, and get yourself some LG Speed and custom merch. And we'll see you guys on the next video.